On this episode of Money Matters with Jim Doyle, couples in business together, featuring guests Meghan and Steve Clarke of Tractor Everyday Healthy Foods with Claire Sutton and Deborah Brakeley. Plan more, worry less. This is Money Matters with Jim Doyle.
It's easy to blur the lines between being a couple and a couple that are in business together. Being in business can consume everything if you let it. That's why we'll talk about setting boundaries, great communication styles, and the importance of setting time aside for yourself. How do you share the workload at home and in the business? Welcome. As a wealth advisor working with couples in business, great planning is about more than just the numbers. During our planning process, we spend a lot of time talking about goals. Sometimes they are different, but oftentimes they're unstated. Goals, personal and business, are not clearly defined. Great communication is not just about saying what you want, but it's about being heard. It's about recognizing that everyone needs a voice. But it's also about respectfully dealing with conflict and opening up at a time when there could be a tendency to want to shut down or close off. Let's meet a couple that are hitting all the right notes.
We were both working with 2 young kids, and we get home and want to do a quick dinner and spend an hour with them before they went to bed, but realized often that dinner was kind of a scramble and there weren't, a ton of quick, healthy options. So we just really felt like there was an opportunity to make that easier for people and families.
We didn't have any experience in the industry. I mean, it was madness in the first couple of weeks in particular. We run out of food every day and we were just figuring out how to keep the doors open. But we had a great early support from Kitsilano.
We were about a year and a half, I guess, before we picked our second location, and I think that first year was really just trying to understand our customer and where they were coming from and what they wanted.
And so ultimately we've gotten to 10 locations now. And so this is the space that we turned into our production kitchen for Tractor at Home. Yeah, the first month, I think everybody everywhere in every industry was trying to figure out where the world goes. And ours was fast, it was down 80% over the course of 2 days kind of thing. And so that's when we were really sort of put pen to paper on Tractor at Home and said the future's changing. It's gonna be a long winter, and if everybody's still eating, so let's just find a way to get people food, really high quality food at their homes. And within a few weeks, we sort of knew we were onto something. This space looks quite a bit different than it would when we're actually operating and the building's open. We had a team that wanted to get back to work, and we had people at home needing product, and so we really focused on just using this facility to sort of leverage the food, make new recipes, and get it packaged and sent to people's houses. It does feel like we'll put a lot more into Tractor at Home in the next 2-3 years. That's the exciting part, is what can you do as the world moves forward?
When we come back, we'll welcome Meghan and Steve.
Life in general is just about one foot in front of the other and just getting things done. And I think, we entered an industry in food that we didn't really know much about.
Welcome back. We're joined by Steve and Meghan of Tractor Everyday Healthy Foods. Okay, now here comes the dreaded phrase. I could never work with my partner. How does that ring with you?
We've heard that. A lot of our friends say the same, and I could see how it would be challenging for a lot of couples because you spend so much time together, and sometimes you just need a break. But yeah, I think Steve and I have found a a good pattern and rhythm that works for us. And yeah, some days it feels weird going a couple hours without talking to him.
Now, Steve, we're going to put you on the hot seat with the same question.
Yeah, I mean, when we got into business together, we'd been together for quite a while. And so I think we had a sense that like our cadence and our rhythm wasn't really a high conflict sort of situation. Like it felt like we had pretty clear visions about what we were good at each, and they were separate roles, and that we could get along and work through stuff without it being controversial. And so we just started down the path, and here's where we're at 8 years later. Yeah.
8 years, eh?
Goes by quick.
Yeah. Now, family businesses thrive on informality. So let's hear Claire Sutton's thought on good communication.
Claire, welcome to the show today. When we're talking about couples in business, good communication is paramount. What tips do you have for moving beyond conflict?
So what we want to do is resolve the conflict to be able to move beyond it. And what couples need to do is make sure they meet and deal with the issue. And the way you do that is you externalize the issue. Externalizing the issue would be we have a financial issue, we have a budgeting issue, we're struggling with payroll. What do we need to do? So we work together in dealing with the issue, and we're not blaming.
So we talk about personal life and business life. How do you make that work together?
We cannot work 24/7. So we need to acknowledge that we all have a personal life, I take a whole life approach. So we need a break from work. Those gifts of time where you're taking care of yourself or your relationship allows you to come back to work recharged, refreshed, with new creativity, and you end up being more productive.
Most new businesses are starting out with limited resources. Now, you had 2 young children, and you can only commit so much time. How did you guys juggle this?
A good point. I think when we started, our kids were really little. They were 4 and 6, so barely into elementary school, still kind of preschool. So I had a lot of flexibility. I mean, I wasn't there nearly as much as I am now because I was really still at home a lot of the time with our kids. But as our kids have gotten older, I've been able to be in there more. And I think the great thing is often Steve I don't really have to explain when we've got stuff going on at home. Steve just picks up the slack at work and kind of runs with it. So it's definitely got some pros when it comes to managing both together.
So Steve, early on, you're probably carrying a lot of the weight of running and operating the business. Okay.
Sure.
How has it gone from there?
I mean, I guess entrepreneurship life in general is just about like one foot in front of the other and just getting things done. And I think, we entered an industry in food that we didn't really know much about. And I bring that up because it just started with, it's got to get done, whether it's, getting the kids to school, or whether it's signing a lease, or whether it's finding someone to hire or whatever. And I think we just started off by getting stuff done, divide and conquer, however that moved. And as the company then got bigger over time, there's more and more to do, and there's more things to juggle. We brought in, people, the team's grown a lot, and it's a lot more mature, and that was part of it. Our roles started to become a bit more defined, like Meg's, general expertise is more on the brand and marketing side of things. I'm more on the operations and finance side of things. So those two worlds live a little bit apart, but if Meg had to be sidelined for a bit, then I would just roll up my sleeves and figure out a way to kind of get most of it done, spoon feed her, what do you think? And if she could sign off on an option, then that's what we'd go with. That was it, just try and find a way to get it done.
Sounds like great synergy. We've got more of their story coming up after the break.
I think the best thing we do is we're constantly listening and reading each other, and just being, as open-minded as possible.
Welcome back. You mentioned that your biggest surprise being a couple in business is that the business is always with you, that it's all consuming. I'd love to hear your story on that.
There's always something going on. There's always something to get done. And I think in our world too, like we're in the food business, so even when we go out to get away from work, we sit down, like if you go to a restaurant, you sit down and someone's serving you food and you clearly have a few views on what's great or not quite great. And I think it's something that you're always trying to work on in terms of finding a separation. But it's definitely challenging. It's always going.
Now, Megan, I've heard stories, business at dinner, business at breakfast, business at bed. Okay, business, business, business. Am I anywhere near the mark on that one?
It's pretty accurate. I mean, we talk about it a lot. We're passionate about it and we love it, and I think it's good, it's interesting, and I think it's healthy to be talking about it and being always thinking and exploring ideas, but it is, we really have to work hard to carve out that time when we're not talking about it, and I do think it's really important to do that. Otherwise, you just never get a break, so we really do try hard to do that, yeah.
To talk about leading a fulfilling personal and business life, we're going to hear from Deborah Brakeley.
Welcome, Deborah. So good to have you here.
Good to be here, Paige.
Business families can be informal. Why do they need business rules?
The clearer they can be about the rules that they're going to apply to their work life together and to the business, the better able they are to, I think, meet their potential in working together, because that frees up a lot of energy when you're clear.
So when goals collide, what do you recommend?
I'm recalling a couple I worked with a long time ago who were running a successful business, had a clear division of labor. They both felt very fulfilled by their part in the business, and yet they disagreed about how much to expand the business. One of them wanted to expand the business even into another country, while the other was very adverse to that and really wanted financial security. So they were able to use the use of a mediating lawyer who helped them put together a financial agreement that allowed them to keep the marriage together and the business together, but it just settled the money part, the financial part.
Now, Deborah mentions meeting your potential of working together as a business couple. How do you do that when you're first a couple and then business partners 24/7? Maybe I'm going to throw that one in your camp.
Yeah, I think it's something that we actually talk about as well, because it's not always a perfect, easy path. But I think the best thing we do is we're constantly listening and reading each other, and just being, as open-minded as possible. And I think often if we don't agree on something immediately, if we're, just open ears, we can work through stuff pretty quickly. I think that having that mindset is really helpful.
Now, I've heard of couples, that set date nights and they go, there's a no-go zone for certain types of discussions. What do you think of that?
I think it's a good idea. I think trying to set that rule sometimes can be easier than actually executing on it. But when we have set date nights or go out to dinner and sort of separate work. And if we go out with the intention of doing that, there's a pretty good chance that 90% of dinner is not talking about work, and that's healthy. I mean, you definitely need to turn it off and recharge.
So what else works in your camp, Megan?
I think even just having time separately and carving out time to do things that you enjoy on your own, whether it be exercising or reading or, spending time with friends. I know Steve's carved out some time once a week to meet up with a few friends, have a drink, relax. I often will do a regular morning run. I just think if you can kind of carve out some space that is your own, it really goes a long way.
Your kids are at an age where they need a lot of your time and attention?
They do, but I also feel like, they're getting more independent, and each year that goes by, I actually have to stop and try to hold on to that time. So it's going fast, and it's always evolving. That work-life balance with kids, family, and your own business that we're both really heavily involved in. I feel like it changes every 6 months, yeah.
When we come back, we'll we'll be talking about the importance of carving out personal time.
In the early days, it's hard to let go because we've started from such a small, nimble team. It feels a little uncomfortable to kind of relinquish that control and not sign off on every little detail.
And we're back with Meghan and Steve. As a couple in a rapidly growing business, how do you carve out personal time and family time? Is this where having a great management team is so critical?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much going on with the business, particularly as it grows, that you obviously having great people around supporting, you know, and really thinking about the business and trying to grow it allows you to separate yourself from every little detail, because you know things are going to be taken care of, and oftentimes better than you deal with it. And I think from the beginning of the business, you know, you could really see the difference of having someone that you knew and trusted in a role that they could just keep getting better at, and that really allows you to kind of step back and take a deep breath, and also, like, even business-wise, look from a higher level and probably make better business decisions.
Now, Meghan, I've talked to business owners before who say, you know what, I do the darn best job all by myself, but I really need to let that other person actually do the job. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in the early days, it's hard to let go because we've started from such a small, nimble team. It feels a little uncomfortable to kind of relinquish that control and not sign off on every little detail. But as we get more confident as a team, there's so much more momentum when you allow people to be part of that decision making.
Now, it's interesting that you've started this business together, but you brought a lot of skills and experiences to the table from your lives before being a couple. Would you like to share a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I think we both were in business, you know, we probably 15 plus years in business, and both have MBAs, and so had studied a lot of business before we ever headed down this path. And I think that helped in sort of defining what our skill sets were, because they kind of lined up, but they were different. And so I think if both of our business skill sets were in the same, you know, channel, it might not have been a great idea to go into business together, but they actually fit really well together, and that's kind of what gave us the confidence to work together, and also helped us have a sort of a pretty good cover of business from the get-go.
So the MBA is a great starting point in terms of foundational knowledge, okay, but real life experiences, okay, where did they come from?
I can go first. I mean, I out of undergrad, I actually had a little clothing business. I took a kick at the can early days, and that sort of fluttered along for 3 or 4 years, and didn't do well enough to want to continue that. So that's when I went back to school, and I became an investment banker for about a decade, and so saw a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and you know, raising money for companies and that kind of stuff on sort of a larger scale. That was my background.
Mm-hmm. I did more marketing and public relations, communications, and for me, that experience has been really instrumental in a lot of our decision making to date. I feel like we saw enough business to kind of give us a good sense of dealing with different marketing issues, brand issues. The one thing that we haven't been as equipped for is this, you know, tech boom, and the technology is very new to us in marketing versus what we, you know, may have seen 15 years ago. But yeah, those previous jobs have been really key.
Well, those experiences, the tech things that you raise, okay, I don't think you're alone in that one, okay? Steve, Meghan, thanks for joining us here today, and I really want to appreciate your contributions to the show. For couples, communication around certain subjects can be challenging, but for business partners in business together, it's essential. Sometimes my greatest value as an advisor can be encouraging communication and bringing focus to the conversation. knowing what to bring forward and when. It's no small thing to manage and govern all your business content. Not only is the amount of data that businesses manage increasing exponentially, the complexity of regulations is growing too. As your business grows, it's likely to ask more of you, whether that's HR policies, oversight and performance management, or building a management team and bringing in more professional advice from lawyers, your accounting team, and your investment advisors. Moving to a more structured format can be difficult for business owners who created success off the back of a napkin. Now, I wish we had more time. I want to thank Steve and Meghan Clarke, Deborah Brakeley, and Claire Sutton for sharing their thoughts on money matters. Because financial aspects touch so many elements of our lives, it pays to get great advice. Plan more, worry less.